Welcome to the Patriotic Pulpit. I believe one of the greatest dangers to the United States, besides the Biden administration alone, is simply the fact that we have no borders of the United States. We have simply erased the borders. And the Biden administration has actually been behind the invasion of the United States. And so just to keep this issue in front of us, I noticed an article in the Epoch Times just the other day that reads this way: Mexican soldiers in the United States are worrying agents, that is, Border Patrol agents. Mexican soldiers with assault rifles are on the United States side of the border in San Diego. And so we're told in Jocumba, California, San Diego County, a couple of Mexican soldiers armed with assault rifles patrol the rocky terrain in these hills above San Diego. And below them are the white tents on the Mexican side of the border, which signals, of course, the Army presence. That is, their Mexican Army tents on the Mexican border side outside of San Diego. Manny Bayan, a National Border Patrol Council spokesman, said that, and he's in San Diego, said, usually any incursion by the Mexican military is directly reported to headquarters, and the White House is notified. And after watching an Epoch Times video of the Mexican soldier in the hills above the San Judas break, Mr. Bayan said it's obvious that the soldier was on U.S. soil. They should know better, he told the Epoch Times. There's a boundary marker on top of that hill. I've been up there. I've seen it. Any incursion presents a risk to the safety of Border Patrol agents, not to mention, of course, the citizens in the United States. This is exactly what happens when the Biden Democratic, communistic, socialistic, Marxist organization bent on erasing the borders, bent on destroying America, has taken over, and they have erased the border, and now we have Mexican soldiers in the United States patrolling the border. As a matter of fact, drug cartel agents are the ones who are overseeing the border, or what used to be the border between the United States and Mexico. We have Mexican drug cartels. It astounds me that there's anyone who's still in favor of the Biden administration. So here's something else interesting. A Border Patrol agent in Arizona doesn't want to be named for fear of retaliation, according to the Epoch Times article, told the Epoch Times that no incursions go unanswered. Quote, anytime Mexican military comes on our side, we're always notified. It's a big deal. We have guys that are liaisons with the South side, so they're going to be notified, and there's definitely going to be phone calls made immediately. End of quote. But isn't it just beyond the imagination that we have capitulated so far to Mexico and foreign nations that we cannot even stand up for our own borders, and we now have our borders being patrolled, at least in some segments, by the Mexican government and the Mexican military. Not only so, but the drug cartels. We can't control our own. And our Border Patrol agents, the Border Patrol itself has become simply the welcoming committee, and simply welcoming the Mexicans and the Chinese and all the foreign nationals coming into the United States, processing them, and I suppose probably 1/2 to 1/3 of the Border Patrol is simply engaged in doing that. This is more than just, it's treason. It's treasonous on a high level from the Biden administration. But there's much more to this story, and we'll talk about some of that as we move along. So less than 3 months ago, according to the Epoch Times, the gap at the end of this border wall where the military tents now sit was a pedestrian highway for thousands of foreign nationals entering the U.S. illegally from Mexico. So Joe Biden has helped create a highway to bring in illegals into this country. So we have now up to 10 million. Now, stop for a moment. We have already between 15 and 20 million illegals in this country that are being supported by taxpayer money. And this is what our Congress wants to be done. This is what our Congress not only allows, but they have pushed it on the American taxpayer. But now we have even 10 million more since Joe Biden took office. I appreciate Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas's efforts to stop the border flow. But the Biden administration continues to take them to court, and everybody's trying to go to court for it. We talked about it in the last, and that is we simply need in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, California. Of course, they're never going to, because California's already been given back to Mexico, basically. So we need to nullify the laws of the United States and say, no, we're not going to abide by those laws, and we're going to go ourselves, not separating, but we're going to go ourselves. And we're going to secure the border regardless of what the courts of the United States say. Now, there are camps along the border. California specifically, there's Willow Camp, there's Moon, and 177 camps. In February, Kate Monroe, a United States Marine Corps veteran, Republican congressional candidate, District 49, who lost in the March 5th primary election, purchased a 400-foot coil of razor wire off Amazon and blocked the gap. The razor wire is still there. Now, two of the sites, known as Moon and 177 camps, they're close to the illegal crossings, and they're near small towns of Jacumba and Boulevard on the southeastern fringe of the county. They're now patrolled. Now, these are small towns patrolled by Mexican military, according to Border Patrol. And for all the military presence, illegal crossings have not substantially dipped in the area, according to the Times Record News, or the Times article. March 6, 1,132 illegal immigrants were apprehended in the San Diego sector, which is within the average daily range over the last several weeks, according to Brandon Judd, president of the National Border Patrol Council. So we'll come back to Brandon Judd in just a moment, National Border Patrol Council. But he did say, we have not seen a drop in total arrests. Now, the reason that he mentions that is because apparently the Biden administration, now in an election year, are trying to fix the optics of everything in order that we might have, or he might have, a re-election. Let me just stop here and make a comment regarding optics. I get so tired. Don't you get tired of hearing that they want to clean up the optics? You know, when El Paso had thousands of illegal immigrants camping in the airport, and so in order to give the optics to the newspapers, when Joe Biden came down there, and to the television cameras, they cleaned out the airports, and they cleaned up the town, and they cleaned up the trash, so that Joe Biden and the national news media would not have the optics of what was really happening. What's wrong with optics? Optics means you don't have principles. You're simply worried about what it looks like. You don't have any principle about anything, but you don't like the way it looks. And so the way it looks might be against Joe Biden in the administration, so they're trying to clean up the optics. Todd Benson, or Bensman, actually, a senior national security fellow at the Washington-based CIS, which is Center for Immigration Studies, former counterterrorism intelligence officer, told the Epoch Times that according to Mexican soldiers that he interviewed, they're rounding up migrants near the U.S. border and moving them south, and they said their orders are to hunt down all immigrants, give them to Mexican immigration for deportation to the southern provinces. And they told me that their deployments are open-ended. So what's happening? Why is it all of a sudden the Mexican military are rounding up some of those Mexicans, illegals, and taking them south? Well, once again, it is optics. It's not because of principle. It's not because the Biden administration has any principles. The man has no principles whatsoever, except simply to destroy America. But the principles are gone. They simply are after optics. So Biden has had some bilateral meetings with the Mexican counterpart in November 17, 2023. And he spoke with the Mexican president on the phone in December 22, and it's led to a December 27th, right after Christmas, meeting with the Mexican President Obrador and a U.S. delegation, including Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas, preceding Biden's trip to Mexico City, which took place on January 9. But all of that simply is, and this is from Brandon Judd and also Bensman, he said, the Biden administration may have cut a deal with Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador to crack down on illegal immigrants headed northward. Why is that the case? It is the case because only of optics. Don't you tire of presidents or national leaders, senators and congressmen who are simply only interested in optics and the way it looks? That's exactly what Bensman from the CIS is stating. He said it's just about optics. One Mexican newspaper reported the Mexican government is under U.S. pressure to step up its military operations in Tijuana, Juarez, and Matamoros, cities across from San Diego, El Paso, and Brownsville, respectively. For example, in Matamoros, the military recently bulldozed a massive migrant camp and dug anti-pedestrian trenches. But be sure of this, ladies and gentlemen. If Biden gets reelected, it's all over for America. Not only is it all over, but it's all over primarily not only because he's basically a socialist, a Marxist who's bent on destroying America in every which way he can, but also specifically because, as we're talking the border, it's going to be erased. What we have going on now regarding trying to clean up a little bit about the border, all optics. It's all political optics in order that he might be reelected. And what is astounding to me as well is how is it that so many Democrats and so many Democrat supporters continue to support Biden, saying, well, he's trying to do something regarding the border and clean it up, as if we have been so stupid not to know that it's all about the way it looks, only that he might be able to get back into office and continue running roughshod over the law of the United States and, of course, the border of the United States as well. Here's what one official said: Mexico is obviously still providing some kind of escape hatch in Arizona and California because they're still crossing in large numbers in the open. It's not a hermetic seal, obviously. All of it, of course, is only political posturing. That's all that it is. Political posturing by means of the Biden administration. But here's another kicker. If that's not enough, the political posturing, the optics of it, blame Republicans for what's going on. It seems that just as Saul Alinsky told us, Saul Alinsky tells us, this was, of course, Obama's textbook, Rules for Radicals, and Obama went to the Rules for Radicals for how to lie so good and so well. And one of the rules, I remember reading Rules for Radicals several years ago when Obama came into office, and Saul Alinsky said, the bigger the lie, the better. You tell the biggest lie that you can. Because small lies, those white lies, people kind of sniff that out and they feel like that's not really that's not the truth, and he's kind of prevaricating here. But if you tell big whoppers, just giant lies, he said that's the way it was going in. And of course, Saul Alinsky took his cues from the Mao Tse-tungs of the world, also from Vladimir Lenin, Leon Trotsky, all of those. He took his cues from those. That is, tell the biggest lie that you can. And this is exactly the lie that the Democrats are telling right now. The border security bill that was recently agreed upon in the Senate, and the House thankfully rejected it. But now Gavin Newsom goes to the border and he issues a statement accusing Republicans, just as Biden did in the State of the Union address, of sabotaging bipartisan efforts to end the border crisis. They say if it's bipartisan, then you need to be involved in it, because bipartisanship, that's what we need, and that means it's a good bill. Let me tell you something. There are as many Republican turncoats as there are Democrat Marxists in the Senate. They are either in the bank for the national defense contractors, or they're in the bank for world government, whatever it may be, the George Bush Jr. type. They're all in it for no borders. Incidentally, mentioning George W. Bush, he also wanted to broker a deal with, at that time, Vicente Fox, to have no borders. just to have a North American Union. That's what they're all about. That's what they've been driving to all of the time. Well, Gavin Newsom says it was a bipartisan bill in the Senate passed, and Republicans in Congress have done nothing but create chaos and sabotage because they're attempting to block progress. They shot down the bipartisan border security deal, said Newsom. Now, Newsom didn't mention that the proposed $118 billion, that's billion with a B, omnibus spending bill contained tens of billions of taxpayer dollars for military aid to Israel, Ukraine, far exceeding the amount for border security. The reason the House Republicans called it dead on arrival and rejected it was partly because of that. But also I want you to know that the deal said that they wanted to rewrite the border security in the sense that they want to allow so many thousands of illegals to cross the border every single day, and then put a cap on how many illegals come in, and then the president's going to shut it down. I have said this before, and I'll say it again, and that is simply a confession that he can shut it down, the president, at will anytime he doesn't want to. The reason it's not shut down is because the Democratic administration, unfortunately backed by neocon Republicans, don't want the border to shut down. They don't want it. They want a welfare state to break the back of Americans. That's the way they're going to drive us into a complete welfare socialistic state. But be that as it may, this is Gavin Newsom. He didn't mention the billions of dollars sending overseas. And so Newsom said this: on his first day of office, President Biden put forward a comprehensive plan focused on securing our border. Remember that Saul Alinsky lie? Securing the border, letting thousands, in other words, we're going to put the stamp of approval on thousands of illegals coming across daily, and that's going to be securing the border because we're going to stamp them as legal. Ensuring dreamers have a permanent home in our country and helping businesses address their needs for workers. So we're lacking workers, and we've got to let the entire third world into this country. But Brandon Judd said this: Mr. Newsom is dead wrong to blame Republicans, and Judd is exactly right. With 50 to 60% of Border Patrol personally tied up on processing illegal immigrants instead of patrolling the border, Mr. Biden said, that is a CIS official, that Mr. Newsom could help by sending some National Guard to help, as other governors have, such as, of course, Greg Abbott, or Florida governors, South Dakota, Georgia, Tennessee. With a total of 14 states, they've sent National Guard troops to the Texas border since 2021. But not to be outdone, Joe Biden says exactly the same thing. Same thing as Gavin Newsom said. So during his March 7th State of the Union address, Biden deflected criticism about handling the border crisis, and he blamed, you guessed it, Republicans for the border security bill, the bipartisan border security bill, which he said would have paid for 1,500 additional agents and officers. What good is that, by the way, if all they're going to do is process them in? 60% of the force, the border security, is processing people into this country illegally. That is nothing at all. 100 immigration judges to tackle the backlog of 2 million. Why are they going to court? Why don't they kick them out? Why give them court dates? And 4,300 more asylum officers to resolve cases in 6 months. I'll tell you what needs to be done. They need to change the laws regarding asylum. Quit this asylum seeking. When President Biden claimed the bill contained the toughest set of border security reforms we've ever seen, the Epoch Times says the Republicans groaned, just as I'm groaning now. The toughest border security reforms? No. No, not at all. It's not tough border security at all. It is simply erasing the border. It is simply eviscerating the entire border security. So when Republicans groaned during the March 7th address, Biden said sarcastically, oh, don't you think so? Don't you like that the bill that conservatives got together, said was a good bill? I'll be darned, he said. That's amazing. Well, the bill was sponsored by one of the writers of it, or one of the sponsors was James Lankford, a senator from Oklahoma, former youth minister at a Baptist church. We'll talk about that in just a moment. But that is all, of course, a sham. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all in order to draw people in, get them to change the law that will last after the Biden administration is gone and allow people to continue to flow into this country illegally, but just stamp them as legals. That's all it's about. American people don't want this. The American people want the border stopped. I say this, stop the border entirely. Why can't we not shut it down? Biden said he could do it. He could do it after they allowed 5,000 people a day. We can shut that border down. We have overloaded the system, 10 million extra illegals in this country in the last 3.5 years. 10 million. That overloads the system. They have taken advantage of any goodwill that the Americans have. Shut the border down. Now, when we come back, I want to talk about James Lankford and that bipartisan bill for just a moment. This is an article from the Los Angeles Times just a couple of weeks ago regarding that bipartisan border bill that was sponsored by, negotiated by Senator James Lankford, a senator from Oklahoma. So the Los Angeles Times reads this way: just before the Senate voted, this was Wednesday, this would be a couple of Wednesdays ago, to kill the border deal. He spent the last 4 months negotiating. Oklahoma Senator James Lankford climbed a set of marble stairs outside the chamber and joined his wife in the visitors' gallery. As the Republican quietly watched from above, briefly, the outsider, after defending his legislation in a last Senate floor speech, fellow negotiator Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona was down on the floor excoriating the Republicans who had abandoned Lankford one by one. After insisting on a border deal and asking him to negotiate a compromise on one of the country's most intractable issues. She said, less than 24 hours after we released the bill, my Republican colleagues changed their minds, said Sinema, a former Democrat turned independent. Turns out they want all talk and no action. It turns out border security is not a risk to our national security. It's just a talking point for the election. You know what? This is why this Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona absolutely turncoat on this issue. James Lankford used to be a youth minister at a Baptist church in Oklahoma. I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure personally he's a wonderful guy. But you know what? These wonderful guys, they don't understand apparently what's going on. We have a law, and that law says that they are to be stopped at the border. We don't need to negotiate with the Biden administration to allow thousands of people to come in per day and then shut the border down. Why would we want to compromise what the American people want? I know he thought that he was negotiating between the liberals and the conservatives. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how we get to socialism. This is how we get to losing our country. I ask this question: why cannot we secure our own border and follow the law that we already have? Why can we not do that? And what confidence do we have that if we did negotiate another bill, that the Biden administration would obey it, because he's disobeyed on a daily basis the laws that we have? Why, James Lankford, do you do this? I don't understand why the Republicans, and even apparently conservative Republicans, are so naive. I understand Kyrsten Sinema, she's an independent, she used to be a Democrat, so that shows where her lack of thinking is. But you know, James Lankford, this is ridiculous. The risk to national security is the Biden administration. And this is why the bill was stupid, because it simply gave the Biden administration an opportunity to criticize Republicans. In other words, James Lankford, you threw the Biden administration a great big meaty bone to chew on. That's all you've done. by giving a bill that the American people don't want, and I'm going to dare say the citizens of Oklahoma, the state that you represent just north of us, they don't want it either, because we already have 10 million extras in here. Are we going to get them out? Here's the deal. I say, before we cut any deal with the Biden administration or any Democratic socialistic administration, let's shut the border down. See if it can be done. See if that can be done, because I don't think it will be done. Period. See if they can shut the border, number one. Number two, export every person who's come in illegally. Get them out of here. Now, if we can't do that, then why are we going to negotiate a deal? I tell you, this, James Lankford, you simply played into the hands of the Democrats. That's all that's going on here. So Lankford, walking out of the gallery with his wife close by his side, says the LA Times, he was asked by a waiting reporter if he felt betrayed by his party. He sighed deeply and waited a few beats. I'm disappointed we didn't get it done, Lankford said diplomatically. I don't know if I feel betrayed because the issue is still there. It's not solved. We don't need to solve the issue, James Lankford, in Congress. We need, except for the fact that you need to bring the Biden administration to the courthouse, that is the Senate, and try him, impeach him for violating the laws every single day. What? I don't know. I'm a citizen of the United States, and I want to know why is that not being done? Why do we have to negotiate a new bill? Why can't we follow the law that we have? Why be disappointed, James? Senator Lankford, I don't understand. What are you lacking here in thinking on this one? He then walked back down, says the LA Times, down the stairs with his wife, with Sinema, who had come up to greet him after her speech, walked out of the chamber to watch the bill's defeat. In the end, all but 4 Republicans voted against moving forward on the legislation, including Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who had delegated Lankford to negotiate the bill combining Ukraine aid and border security and had been closely involved in the negotiations. But here's the problem. Lankford, you're simply doing the bidding of Mitch McConnell, who has been absolutely, in my view, a turncoat on all of these things. Ukraine war, big government, neocon himself. Why would you do the bidding of a neocon? A neocon has said, hey, we'll take the welfare state, the warfare state. We're going to do it all, but we're going to sneak all this billions of dollars for Ukraine aid in there. I am flabbergasted that Lankford would go along with it. Now, the article says Lankford was a former Baptist youth minister. Well, that's probably his problem. I'm a minister myself, so I'm not trying to be critical of ministers, but I'm simply saying, naivete is really deep sometimes with some of us, and apparently that's the way it was here. He's known as one of the most sincere, well-liked members of the Senate. I don't doubt that's true. He is a conservative who rarely votes against his party. Well, you know what? You can vote against the party. You have to vote your conscience and vote what is right. He's long championed stricter measures at the border, has been supportive of former Trump. So his colleagues' swift and outright rejection of the deal he has spent months negotiating, and their willingness to completely abandon Lankford in the process after many of them indicated they were supportive of the direction of the talks, is all the more remarkable, says the LA Times, end of quote. So then Chris Murphy makes this comment, Democratic senator, they reacted to it like it was poison. Well, let me tell you something. It is poison. It is poison. It is to change the laws of the United States. And we have no assurance from anybody up there that you're going to obey the law anyway. So why write the law differently? Why not let's see if you can obey the law that are now on the books. So I'm going to say this. Here's what we can do. Let's cut out welfare for every single, that is not one federal dollar out of my pocket or state dollar out of my pocket to any person illegally coming across the border. None. No money. Not one dime. Now people say, well, that doesn't sound very Christian. You just said you're a minister. You know what? Christianity and Christian giving is about me voluntarily giving to that which I see as a need or people I see as a need. It is not government taking a crowbar to my wallet and ripping out so much money and giving it somewhere else. That is a crock. It is not Christianity. That is stealing. That is theft. So let's do this. This is how the liberals always argued. You know, they get on Facebook and they get on these different social media sites and they argue with Christians and say, how unchristian of you not to allow immigrants to come in here and not give them money. All right, let's do this. Let's make it all voluntary. All voluntary. And every person who voted for Joe Biden, you see how many monies you come up with, you give voluntarily to the illegals coming across, but stop robbing Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. Stop robbing the American citizens, giving money unconstitutionally to those illegals coming across. Why are we doing that? It's absolutely insane. This is what the problem is in the United States. It's the welfare warfare state, and we're now turning welfare into what the Democrats and many Republicans, such as James Lankford, want done, and that is taking money from my pocket and giving it to illegals. It's absolutely wrong. It's unchristian. I tell you what, we need to stop it, and if we did, that would stop the flow. So this was Biden. Biden said they really threw the man overboard, Biden said of Lankford at a fundraiser shortly after the bill was defeated. So see, now we have Biden putting on, strumming his, stroking the strings on the violin and saying, you know what, oh, so sad that what they did to Lankford. Well, if Lankford had not been so ridiculously naive about it and get in there and try to please the Biden administration and the Mitch McConnells of the world, there would be no rejecting Lankford. I tell you what, the people of Oklahoma need to reject Lankford. He has shown himself not to be savvy enough, at least to be a senator from the state of Oklahoma. Well, what needs to be done? We need to stop the welfare, stop the warfare state, get rid of all of that. And anybody comes across illegally, stop them. And if the Democrats and those people who supported Joe Biden want to support the illegals, let them pony up the money personally themselves. I'll just finish this with a short little story. I got into a discussion with a newspaper editor in this area not long ago. Oh, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, on this very issue. And she was saying, well, how unchristian of you not to want to support through the welfare state, that is, government takes money from my pocket and give it to other people. How unchristian not to help those people. I said, I'll tell you what, we'll see how Christian we all are. How many people have you, yourself, how many illegal immigrants coming across, Chinese nationalists, Mexican nationalists, Guatemalans, any immigrant coming across, Mideastern, how many have you adopted and put in your home? How many have you done? She got so mad she couldn't even talk to me anymore. I don't want to talk about it anymore. No, because that's the real issue. They want to preach to you and tell you to give up and give your money to the federal government to distribute whom they choose. But I tell you what, true Christianity is voluntary giving to those whom you see in need. It is not me stealing from you via the government and giving it to illegals coming across the border. No, James Lankford, you have sad disappointment on that particular border bill.